Hi everyone, thanks for stopping by and for returning to the old world. Today let's talk about batch painting and why I'm not a fan. Now before I launch into the main topic of the video today, just a quick note as to what batch painting is. I'm sure many of you are already aware, but just in case there's anyone newer to the hobby that isn't quite aware of the fundamentals, put simply, it's lining up a bunch of very similar models and then painting a single colour across all of those models, with the idea being that by the time you've got to the end of your batch, the first model will be dry, you can pull out your next paint and off you go again. It's about providing an efficient way of painting up your rank and file models, and also allows a consistency of finish, particularly if you're doing mixing of colours and you're doing that by eye rather than to a specific recipe. So that aside, let's talk about my experiences around batch painting. Now, I personally find I don't have lots of time in a day generally to paint. I do try and find 20 or so minutes as a minimum if I can. But I do find that when looking at painting, particularly units, if I've got a unit sat on my paint desk in front of me, particularly if that unit's sort of 15, 20, maybe even 30 models, more I suppose if you're looking at 8th ed, Warhammer 8th edition hordes, it's a big collection of models and it can be a bit daunting, which in those circumstances I find does put me off even sitting down in the first place to start painting. So I prefer painting smaller numbers of models and try to find that happy medium, I suppose, between getting stuff done and being able to put that love and attention into a single model. Do I use batch painting? Yeah, I use it as a methodology all the time. Not literally, but I suppose 90% of what I'm painting is generally batch painting. It is efficient. It does help get stuff done. And I tend to find that painting in batches of about 5 models, for me, finds that good middle ground between getting stuff done and being able to put a bit of attention into the work I'm doing without getting overwhelmed by the numbers. And that's worked fairly well for me. It's very rare when I'm painting sort of rank and file models that I would look to do colour mixing, certainly colour mixing on the fly. I tend to reserve that for character models or maybe skirmish models, stuff like that. So the consistency needed for mixing isn't quite as important for me, but appreciate, obviously, if you take a different line and you do a lot of mixing by eye, or even if you're trying to do a 50-50, if you've not got precise measuring tools, then there could be differences that you might not be looking for if you're after something quite uniform. But the risk of waffling, why don't I like batch painting? I've already said it's efficient, it gets stuff done, albeit at the risk of being daunting. Well, it's not just the daunting factor of it. Quite frankly, I think if you've got a large number of models that you're cracking through, it's actually a bit tedious. Paint the arm blue, paint the arm blue, paint the arm blue, come back, paint the shoes red, paint the shoe red, paint the shoe red, etc., etc. And you're just doing the same thing over and over again. It gets a little bit dull. And weirdly can feel like I'm not making the progress I want towards getting stuff done. Now, I know that that's actually not the case, and batch painting is the efficient way of going. But when you've got a load of stuff part painted sat on your paint desk, it doesn't feel particularly great for a progress perspective. Now, the way I tend to paint models is details like the face, unless it's a figure where there's a lot of skin showing. So the Goliath models in the background there are a good example of this. But normally I will do faces. They'll be one of the last things I do. And I do tend to find that actually painting the skin tones on, whatever the skin tone may be, or be it the white skulls of the Necrons there, it's at that point that a model starts to really come together and look done to a greater or lesser extent. And of course I can get there quicker if I'm doing a single model, because I'm just pouring all of my interest into that. I do find as well that with batch painting, there's a real drain on creativity. For me, batch painting is really about sticking to a plan. I know what colours I want to do. I know where I'm going to apply those colours. When I'm painting a single model character, or maybe I'm doing a unit of older, more classic models, such as the Bretonian squires you might have seen floating around in other videos, those models have been painted on an individual basis. So I do feel a little bit more licensed to be creative, to go that extra mile with the highlighting, to mix colours on the fly, not worry so much around, well, within reason, everybody kind of has to look pretty similar because I want unit cohesion or whatever. And when I get going on a single model, when I really get into the groove, I can find that I kind of look up and a couple of hours have gone past and I've just been merrily adding layer after layer, highlight after highlight, shading, washing, whatever. I'm really just getting lost in the miniature, working out what details I want to pick up, thinking about maybe even what's this model's story? How do they fit into my army? Are they a warlord? If so, what's their personality like? What am I trying to represent here? And I don't get that with batch painting. So it all becomes a bit of a chore at times as well, particularly when ending a project and you just got to get this last unit done, and it becomes difficult. So I'm not a fan. From a pleasure perspective, it's not the way forward. But obviously for getting stuff done, it's kind of, I think, the best way, and just making it work for you as much as you can. So then my thoughts around batch painting, why I don't really look forward to doing a session of batch painting nonsense, but why I do it anyway. Is there any particular way you enjoy painting? I know a lot of people like to do so. Doesn't matter what they're painting, as long as they've got a good part. I'll rephrase that. As long as they've got a good podcast going, or they're watching some videos on the old YouTubes, for example. Maybe you only paint single models and look to really stretch yourself and your skills every single time you paint. Let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, thank you very much for dropping by. This is Return to the Old World. Have a great day.